Good evening. Before we begin, I'd like to thank everyone tuning into the live stream. This is my first performance without an in-person audience, but tonight is also very special for me. It's my first time performing in over a year, in person anyways, and this recital is also a milestone in my career. It's my very last academic recital, so I'd like to think of tonight as a celebration of many good things to come. None of this would be possible without the support of my three mentors, so I'd like to thank Dr. Kim McCormick, who I know is listening right now, Marina Piccinini, and my current teacher, Dr. Sarah Frizoff, who is actually here right now. Thank you all for continuing to nurture and inspire me. I would also be remiss not to thank and acknowledge Hui-Chuan Chen, who you will all hear tonight on piano. Hui-Chuan and I have been friends for nearly 6 years, and I've lost count of the number of recitals that we played all over the country at this point. So when the time for this recital came up, naturally she was the only person I thought of. Tonight's program is centered around a little-known composer named Joseph Jongen. I discovered Jongen's music the way many of us do, through YouTube. I heard his flute sonata for the first time in early 2018, and I wanted to learn it so badly, but unfortunately I couldn't find or purchase the score anywhere. And as it turns out, the publisher that owns the rights to all of his music closed in 2015. So at this time, a majority of his works are actually out of print. Fast forward to early 2019, I was in my first year of the doctorate here at UMD, and I randomly did a library search on Jongen, and I discovered that the Performing Arts Library here actually owns a copy of the sonata. So you probably can imagine I've never run to a library so fast in my life before. But when I got there, I was delighted to find out that UMD owns a pristine and untouched copy of the sonata, so that's how I got my hands on it. I became very motivated to do more research and learned that Jongen wrote quite a bit for the flute. In addition to the sonata, which will be performed tonight, he also composed works for flute ensemble, flute and string instruments, a woodwind quintet, and a sextet. Joseph Jongen's flute music is now the topic of my dissertation, and I will be recording all of his works involving the instrument within the next year. I look forward to sharing this music with all of you. Since performing chamber music is a little difficult right now, tonight's program will focus on Jongen and two of his influences, Claude Debussy and Philippe Gobert. So, just a bit about Jongen. Joseph Jongen was a Belgian composer who was born in Liège in 1873. He was considered to be one of the most emblematic composers in Belgium. Today he's considered second only to César Franck, who we all know very well. Jongen was a child prodigy who was admitted to the Liège Conservatory at the age of seven. He was noted to be a talented pianist and composer, winning the Prix de Rome in 1897. This prize launched his international career, and he spent a long period traveling through France, Germany, and Italy. It was during this period that Jongen began taking composition lessons from Richard Strauss and Gabriel Fauré. He also enrolled in Paris's Schola Cantorum, which was the rival to the Paris Conservatory at the time. So whereas at the Paris Conservatory the focus was on opera, at the Schola Cantorum he studied mostly the music of the late Baroque and early classical forms, and this would influence his works later on. Throughout his time in Paris, he also gained a deep admiration for the music of Debussy and Ravel. When World War I broke out, Jongen self-exiled with his family to England, where he continued to compose and form chamber groups with new friends. He returned to Belgium in 1920, where he taught and composed for the rest of his life. Today, Jongen is most remembered for his organ works. His most well-known work is the Symphonie Concertante of 1926, and it's actually considered to be the greatest work ever written for organ and orchestra. The work was commissioned by the Philadelphia Orchestra and the famous organ maker Robin Wanamaker to celebrate the completion of the Wanamaker organ. And if you actually go to Philly today, that organ is actually still in use. I believe it's at the Macy's in City Center. All right, so the first piece on tonight's program is by the most notable composer of the three. Claude Debussy was considered to be by many the first composer of the Impressionist movement, though he rejected this title and didn't like it at all. Debussy's earliest influences came from Russian and Eastern Asian music, which he incorporated into his writing to develop a unique palette of harmonies and orchestral colors. The Prelude to the Afternoon of the Faun is an iconic work in the orchestral repertoire. It was written in 1894 and premiered in Paris with Georges Barrère playing the famous flute solo at the beginning. The work was inspired by a poem of the same name written by Stéphane Mallarmé and was considered by many to be the quote-unquote beginning of modern music. Pierre Boulez said that the flute of the faun brought new breath to the art of music. Debussy himself stated that the music of this prelude is a very free illustration of Mallarmé's beautiful poem. By no means does it claim to be a synthesis of it. Rather, there is a succession of scenes through which pass the desires and dreams of the faun in the heat of the afternoon. Then, tired of pursuing the timorous flight of nymphs and naiads, he succumbs to intoxicating sleep, in which he can finally realize his dreams of possession in universal nature.